When a Spartan boy reached the age of 7, his mother handed him a single red cloak, then sent him barefoot into the state barracks to live on scraps, sleep on reeds, and learn to steal without getting caught. A childhood so harsh that 2 out of every 5 recruits did not survive their first winter. No other society of the ancient world wagered its own children on the promise of military perfection, and the result was a warrior caste whose very heartbeat matched the rattle of bronze on shield. How did a modest valley city, hemmed in by mountains and rival poleis, turn relentless deprivation into unmatched battlefield prestige? Was the edge in the glittering hoplon shield, in the tight, shoulder-locking phalanx, or in a civic creed that taught every citizen there was no higher art than conquering fear itself? This episode in our Greatest Armies series drills straight into the Spartan war machine, tracking its evolution from austere village militia to the gold standard of martial discipline. We will march through the infamous Agoge training gauntlet, sit at the communal mess tables where iron currency trumped silver coins, and witness the brutal Crypteia night patrols that welded terror into policy. Along the way, we will test the legends, 300 at Thermopylae, mothers telling sons to return with their shields or on them, and separate forged myth from steel-hard fact. By the end, you will see why opposing commanders dreaded the sight of a red-cloaked wall advancing in perfect silence, and why modern boot camps still steal pages from Spartan playbooks 2 millennia later. Before we press shields and step into formation, tap like and subscribe for more 4K history documentaries. Your support keeps this campaign of knowledge driving forward. Sparta's geographical context. Nestled in the wide Eurotas Valley, Sparta enjoyed natural defenses that shaped both mindset and policy. Mountain ridges framed its eastern and western flanks, while the Taygetus Range imposed a stark boundary between the city and the outer world. The only true approach from the north twisted through narrow passes that a modest garrison could seal with ease. This isolation cultivated a wary outlook, for the Spartans learned early that survival required guarding the bottlenecks. Arable land in Laconia was limited, and the rocky soil demanded stubborn labor. The scarcity of fertile ground heightened competition with neighboring communities and reinforced the drive to dominate. Control of the broad Messenian plain across Mount Taygetus therefore became a question of existence rather than ambition. When conquest supplied grain yields that the homeland lacked, Spartan rulers cemented the link between expansion and food security. The river Eurotas added another layer to the defensive lattice. Its seasonal floods carved a natural moat that complicated enemy maneuvers, while also providing water for crops in a climate prone to summer droughts. Small as that advantage may appear, consistent harvests allowed the citizen army to train year-round instead of dispersing during lean months. Geography, therefore, underwrote stamina as much as safety. Proximity to the sea, curiously, did not lure Sparta toward maritime trade. The coast lay several miles distant, separated by hills that hampered merchant traffic. Without a bustling port, the city escaped the cosmopolitan influences that flowed through Corinth or Athens. Insularity was reinforced by choice, as lawmakers discouraged prolonged travel abroad and kept foreign coinage at arm's length. The landscape thus mirrored the inward focus of Spartan policy. Over centuries, these environmental factors entwined with ideology. Rugged mountains inspired fortitude, scarce fields justified conquest, and seclusion fostered suspicion of luxury. When historians later praised Spartan austerity, they overlooked how much was dictated by topography. Geography did not merely host the Spartan experiment, it sculpted the very instincts that defined the warrior state. Origins of Spartan society 900 BC. In the shadowy years that followed the collapse of Mycenaean power, migrating Dorian clans settled across the Peloponnese. Oral tradition speaks of stern men descending from the north who carried a dialect that would become the Spartan tongue. By 900 BC, their villages merged into the twin settlements of Limni and Messoa beside the Eurotas, laying a foundation for the polis we recognize. The new inhabitants soon turned outward, subduing neighboring peoples and asserting control over Laconia. The most consequential conquest targeted fertile Messenia across the Taygetus peaks. A drawn-out struggle ended with the enslavement of the defeated population, creating the Helot class, whose agricultural toil freed Spartan citizens for permanent military service. This victory, however, also posed a demographic paradox. Warriors were few, serfs were many, and fear of uprising would shape every subsequent law. Enter the shadowy lawgiver Lycurgus, whose reforms crafted a constitution centered on equality among citizens, rigid discipline, and the primacy of the common mess hall. Whether Lycurgus lived exactly as recounted or served as a convenient symbol of collective legislation, his code fostered a remarkable stability. Land assignment in equal plots discouraged economic jealousy, while heavy penalties for cowardice ensured battlefield cohesion. The reforms also introduced a mixed governing structure that balanced two hereditary kings with a council of elders and an assembly of citizens. This constitutional blend diffused authority enough to prevent tyranny, yet kept decision-making within the warrior elite. In later centuries, Greek philosophers praised the system as an example of balanced governance, though it rested on the forced labor of helots. By the closing years of the 9th century BC, Sparta had crystallized around three pillars: territorial control of Messenia, a citizen body bound by shared discipline, and a political framework designed to preserve both. These origins planted seeds that would flourish into the formidable military culture celebrated throughout classical Greece. Social hierarchy. Sparta divided society with mathematical clarity. At the summit stood the Spartiates, full citizens who alone enjoyed the right to vote, bear arms in the main phalanx, and pass their estate to legitimate heirs. Their lives were regulated from birth to ensure unwavering loyalty, and any deviation risked loss of status. Beneath them lived the perioikoi, free dwellers of surrounding towns who handled commerce, craftwork, and light military duties but lacked political voice. The lowest tier comprised the helots, an agricultural population bound to the land and compelled to deliver produce to their Spartan masters. Each layer performed functions vital for the survival of the state. Helots worked the grain and olive groves, sustaining both citizens and their perioikoi partners. Perioikoi forged arms, built ships, and traded on limited scale, activities considered unfit for Spartan men committed to perpetual drill. This specialization allowed the citizen body to maintain full-time readiness, a rarity in the ancient world where most armies disbanded during planting season. Severe rituals reinforced hierarchy. Helots endured public humiliation rites designed to remind them of subjugation, while young Spartans periodically conducted the Crypteia to terrorize any potential rebels. Perioikoi, though freer, understood that legal disputes ultimately favored Spartiate interests. Yet the arrangement remained stable for centuries because each class received predictable obligations and protections within the rigid order. The social pyramid also manifested in cultural expression. Citizens wore crimson cloaks and grew their hair long as signs of privilege. Perioikoi adopted more modest attire, and helots expressed identity mainly through communal songs lamenting lost freedom. Foreign observers, like the traveler Herodotus, noted how sharply manners and speech patterns distinguished classes even inside the same marketplace. Through this carefully calibrated hierarchy, Sparta maximized military manpower while minimizing internal dissent. The structure was harsh, but it generated the surplus labor and unbroken training schedule that would alarm rival Greek cities for generations. The Agoge. At the age of 7, a Spartan boy left his mother's care and stepped into the communal barracks that would mold him into a hoplite. This rite of separation marked the first lesson. Personal bonds must yield to loyalty toward the state. From dawn drills to night watches, the Agoge immersed children in a Spartan identity that prized obedience, endurance, and mental clarity under stress. Physical conditioning dominated daily routine. Boys raced across rough terrain barefoot, wrestled on packed earth, and learned to swim the Eurotaz during icy winters. Scarred knees were badges of honor, and instructors offered no sympathy for injury. Every exercise served a tactical purpose, whether strengthening shield arm muscles or teaching coordination in formation running. By early adolescence, recruits could march long distances in full bronze panoply without complaint. Literacy occupied a narrower slice of the curriculum, yet it existed. Youth memorized terse warrior poetry that celebrated sacrifice and scorned cowardice. They studied music to time their steps and sang paeans that synchronized the phalanx advance. Words were tools for morale rather than philosophical speculation, reflecting Sparta's utilitarian view of culture. Perhaps most controversial was the practice of sanctioned theft. Boys were encouraged to pilfer food from village farms to sharpen stealth, yet flogged severely if caught, reinforcing the twin lessons of cunning and consequence. The infamous black broth of pig blood and vinegar provided minimal sustenance, compelling resourcefulness while preventing complacency. Discipline during the Agoge did not break individuality so much as redirect it. Talented leaders emerged through endurance contests, public debates, and tactical games played with reed spears. By the time a young man reached 20, he possessed not only a sculpted body, but an ingrained instinct to place unit survival above self-interest, a trait that outsiders found both admirable and terrifying. Stages of the Agoge. Early childhood in the barracks established fundamental habits. Recruits learned to sleep on reed mats they cut themselves from riverbanks, ate communal meals without seasoning, and spoke only when addressed by senior cadets. Silence trained the mind to observe. Hunger trained the body to withstand deprivation. Instructors graded each boy on posture, gait, and even the clarity of his voice, seeking signs of future command potential. Adolescence intensified pressure. Public endurance trials, such as the altar flogging at the sanctuary of Artemis Orthia, dared youth to remain motionless while lashes bit into skin. Far from senseless cruelty, Spartans viewed these ordeals as rehearsals for battlefield wounds where stoic composure could rally comrades. Success earned respect that followed a man throughout his career. At 17, promising cadets joined older warriors in mock skirmishes within the hills, leading squads across rocky ravines in search of hidden objectives. These war games taught practical skills in reconnaissance, night movement, and swift shield wall formation. Failure invited ridicule during communal meals, a punishment more feared than physical pain. Graduation at 20 signified entry into the formal army and the Syssitia, permanent dining clubs that bonded members across age groups. Each new hoplite petitioned for acceptance, and rejection meant social death. Within the mess hall, he shared meat, stories, and tactical insights, forging a brotherhood stronger than kin. Only at 30 did a Spartan earn full political rights, marry if he wished, and take his place in the assembly. Even then, he continued to sleep in barracks when on campaign and submit to regular inspections of arms and armor. The stages of the Agoge thus extended far beyond youthful training. They dictated the rhythm of a lifetime. Role of women in Sparta. While much of Greece confined women to domestic seclusion, Sparta entrusted them with an influential public presence. Around 400 BC, foreign travelers reported astonishment at seeing Spartan women exercising outdoors, racing during religious festivals, and voicing opinions at social gatherings. Their physical regimen paralleled that of male youths, including running, javelin throwing, and discus casting to ensure strong offspring. Inheritance laws further boosted female agency. Daughters without brothers could receive family land, and widows often controlled significant estates in their own right. By the Hellenistic era, women possessed nearly 2/5 of Laconian property, a concentration that empowered them to sponsor athletic contests and religious ceremonies. Their wealth indirectly financed the army by sustaining households while men marched abroad. Cultural expectations called upon mothers to sculpt warrior character. Plutarch recounts the famed injunction to return with shield in hand or be carried upon it, a phrase mothers purportedly delivered without tears. Whether literal or exaggerated, the sentiment captures the civic pedagogy embedded in maternal counsel. Encouraging bravery was not mere rhetoric, it aligned maternal honor with battlefield outcomes. Marriage customs diverged markedly from Athenian practice. Brides cut hair short and wore male-style cloaks on their wedding night, symbolizing the merging of two warrior lineages. Husbands continued to live in barracks, visiting spouses by stealth until reaching 30. The arrangement minimized household distraction during a soldier's prime fighting years and fostered resilience in wives who managed estates alone. This unusual autonomy drew criticism from other Greeks who deemed Spartan women outspoken and immodest. Yet within Laconia, their assertiveness balanced a male society often absent on campaign. By raising healthy children, administering property, and sustaining patriotic values, women provided the underpinnings of Spartan endurance long after battlefield glories faded. Military training tactics. When dawn light spilled over the Taygetus crest, Spartiate units gathered on the drill ground in precise files. The first exercise involved synchronized shield lifting, each hoplite raising his aspis with identical swing until an officer's whistle halted motion. Repetition taught muscle memory so thorough that in battle, the wall would form instinctively amid chaos. Spears came next. Warriors thrust the dory forward in short stabbing motions aimed at an imaginary enemy throat or groin, vital targets exposed between shield rim and bronze cuirass. Trainers paced the ranks, correcting elbow angles and foot placement, stressing economy of movement rather than flourish. The goal was to create a living spear hedge that advanced in unbroken rhythm. Mock battles tested these skills under pressure. One locos played aggressor, pressing hard against a second unit ordered to yield ground slowly. Dust rose, bronze clanged, and senior officers observed cohesion rather than individual prowess. Afterward, commanders critiqued gaps, praising those who maintained alignment and chastising any who broke formation to pursue personal glory. Unarmed combat also featured prominently. Wrestling bouts developed balance, while Pygmachia striking drills built upper body strength. Unlike Panhellenic sport competitions, Spartan versions favored rapid submission holds useful if a warrior lost shield and spear. Such versatility would later astonish Persian observers who expected armored opponents to falter when formations shattered. Field exercises concluded with endurance marches across rocky valleys carrying full kit, cloak, and days of rations. Speed mattered less than unity. A column that arrived intact trumped one that straggled in scattered pairs. These relentless routines forged soldiers capable of covering long distances, digging defensive trenches at dusk, and standing watch through the night without complaint. The Phalanx Formation. Picture a forest of bronze-tipped spears advancing as one. In the Spartan phalanx, every hoplite's shield overlapped the neighbor's left side, creating an impenetrable wall from ankle to chin. The first rank bristled with spear points held at chest height, while second and third ranks angled theirs overhead, ready to replace fallen comrades or strike over the front line. The dense arrangement multiplied each warrior's defensive coverage and offensive reach. Discipline, not mere courage, powered this engine of war. A single misstep could open a seam inviting disaster, so Spartans drilled until stepping, lunging, and rotating felt like breathing. Officers stationed on the flanks barked cadence, yet in battle, the rhythm shifted to the pounding of feet and the collective guttural chant that signaled thrust. Observers claimed the synchronized advance resembled a moving bronze wall glinting under the sun. Flexibility distinguished the Spartan version from those of other Greek states. Commanders trained units to perform lateral slides, wheeling maneuvers, and sudden halts without losing cohesion. Such tactics allowed swift adaptation to rough terrain or unexpected enemy movements. At Plataea and later engagements, these deft adjustments proved decisive against less practiced foes. The psychological impact cannot be overstated. Enemy skirmishers often melted before contact, unnerved by the unwavering front and the low, steady song that Spartans used to pace their steps. Persian chroniclers spoke of men who dreamed for weeks afterward of that relentless wall pushing forward. Victory sometimes occurred before the first spear thrust, simply because morale broke. Inside the phalanx, every man relied upon the shield of the comrade to his right. This bond of mutual protection bound lives together more securely than any oath. In success, the formation embodied collective discipline. In failure, it exposed each individual to shame. Thus, the phalanx was at once a battlefield tactic and a microcosm of Spartan society itself. Spartan weapons and armor. A Spartan hoplite's appearance struck fear long before blades crossed. The bronze Corinthian helmet, visorless yet narrowing into a T-shaped eye slit, gave the wearer an emotionless visage that unnerved opponents. Its crested plume added height, while cheek guards muffled speech, making commands carry like metallic murmurs over the din. Beneath the helmet, a crimson cloak flowed, chosen not for vanity, but for masking blood, so comrades would not falter at the sight of wounds. Primary defense came from the aspis, a round wooden shield faced with bronze and spanning nearly 3 feet. Its interior armband and hand grip system allowed heavy pushing without fatigue, a critical factor when phalanxes locked in shoving contests. Warriors polished the bronze surface to mirror brightness, amplifying sunlight into a glare that dazzled enemy eyes during mid-morning clashes. The spear, or dory, measured roughly 8 feet and balanced stabbing power with manageable weight. A tapered iron point delivered lethal thrusts, while the bronze butt spike served both as counterweight and secondary weapon if the primary tip snapped. Mastery of wrist control enabled rapid redirection, turning each hoplite into both wall and whisking blade. Close quarters fighting required the xiphos, a short iron sword with leaf-shaped blade, ideal for upward strikes beneath chin or armpit gaps. Though secondary, it symbolized personal resolve once shields splintered and formations dissolved. Few foes witnessed its full potential because the Spartan aim was to break enemy cohesion with spearwork first. Armor completed the ensemble, a bronze cuirass fashioned to mimic musculature, greaves protecting shins, and occasionally a leather lining for comfort during long marches. Despite weight, years of drill made the panoply feel like a second skin. When arrayed upon a ridge at dawn, the collective gleam and disciplined stance projected an image of invincibility that resonated across the ancient world. The Crypteia, Sparta's secret police. A shadow often moved with the disciplined clarity of the public Spartan drill, and that shadow was the Crypteia. When teenage warriors completed the most demanding phase of their education, select youths received orders at dusk to disappear into the countryside carrying only a knife and a cloak. Their mission was neither patrol nor reconnaissance in the usual sense. It was a test of pure resolve that required them to stalk the Helot villages by night. The state presented this ordeal as an extension of military duty, for Sparta believed that fear in the oppressed population must never ebb. Young men learned to walk silently through olive groves, gauge moonlight, and read the faintest whisper of movement among reeds along the Eurotas. Every sense sharpened until the land itself seemed to breathe beneath their sandals. Helots who appeared capable of leading revolt faced sudden violence from these hidden sentinels. Such acts, grim as they were, impressed upon recruits that the security of the warrior elite rested on constant vigilance. Observers from other Greek cities recoiled at the practice, yet for Sparta it stood as practical politics rendered into nightly ritual. Participation also forged personal survival skills beyond standard phalanx discipline. Alone without supplies, each youth mastered evasion, for capture meant disgrace. He snared small game, drank from springs, and learned to ignore bone-deep fatigue in order to return before dawn inspection. Those who endured emerged with reputations that followed them throughout campaigns against foreign enemies. The Crypteia thus served 2 intertwined aims. It cowed a vastly larger serf population and transformed promising trainees into field-hardened veterans who confronted terror without hesitation. In the Spartan calculus, harsh necessity outweighed the judgment of outsiders, ensuring the custom endured for generations. Spartan diet and austerity. Scarcity taught Sparta to accept simplicity as a badge of honor, and the dining table mirrored that conviction. Soldiers and youths alike gathered around iron cauldrons of black broth known as melas zomos, a blend of pig blood, vinegar, and barley that outsiders found nearly inedible. Citizens praised the dish precisely because it rejected comfort and courted discipline with every swallow. Daily rations rarely extended beyond olives, coarse bread, and occasional boiled pork. Variety ranked low among culinary goals. Endurance ranked highest. In barracks messes, the oldest warrior carved portions in strict equality, reinforcing the principle that no man deserved more fuel for battle than his neighbor. Complaints earned reprimands that stung worse than physical punishment, for public disapproval carried lasting weight. Luxury items such as sweet wine or imported figs entered Laconia in merchant carts, yet leaders limited their consumption to ceremonial feasts. By confining indulgence to sacred occasions, they maintained psychological distinction between everyday readiness and rare celebration. Youths witnessed this pattern early and absorbed the message that self-restraint sustained freedom far better than novelty did. Women upheld the same standard within estates. Household stewards tracked granary levels with military precision, mindful that surplus grain could tip the balance in siege or drought. The practice turned economic management into an extension of national defense while freeing citizens from anxiety over private excess. Austere customs eventually became widely admired beyond the Eurotas Valley. Philosophers pointed to Spartan frugality as evidence that virtue grows when desire narrows. Though later centuries would revel in richer flavors, the legend of warriors fortified by plain fare remained part of the city's enduring mystique. Spartan cultural values. Sparta forged an identity where personal fame bowed before collective honor. Songs performed at state festivals praised the chorus rather than the soloist, and sculptors carved monuments depicting ranks of hoplites advancing in perfect order. Individual achievement mattered, yet it gained significance only within the shared shield wall that protected Laconia. Truthfulness occupied a pedestal beside bravery. Citizens recognized that deception within their ranks weakened cohesion, so boys practiced concise answers from early childhood. When ambassadors arrived from distant courts, they marveled at laconic speech that could silence a crowded agora with a single sentence. Words, sparingly used, acquired greater gravity and discouraged idle boasting. Respect for elders guided social interaction. Gray-bearded veterans enjoyed immediate seating in council halls, and youth seated pathways in the agora without prompt. This hierarchy preserved institutional memory, ensuring that lessons from past campaigns tempered youthful eagerness for glory. In turn, elders remembered their own training and offered direct counsel rather than gentle suggestion. Failure received attention equal to success. A citizen who fled battle surrendered not only weapons, but also voice in the assembly. Pain of exile within one's own city proved so heavy that many chose to redeem honor through later feats of daring. This severe accountability converted risk into opportunity for redemption, reinforcing resilience at every tier of society. At the core stood devotion to community above private interest. Marriage bonds, property rights, and even parenthood operated under the assumption that Sparta came first. The city did not ask love in return. It demanded duty and granted belonging as compensation. Generations accepted that bargain and built a culture whose influence stretched far beyond its modest population. Religion and warfare. Faith in divine favor ran through Spartan veins as surely as courage. Warriors never marched before consulting seers who observed sacrificial fire and studied the pattern of smoke rising into the blue Peloponnesian sky. A favorable sign meant the army moved at once. A troubling omen compelled delay, no matter how urgent the objective. Such patience mystified allies, yet provided moral certainty at the moment steel met shield. Ares received worship across Greece, but in Sparta, the cult of Artemis Orthia wielded particular power. Her sanctuary outside the city hosted competitions where youths bled beneath lashes while grasping the altar, proving devotion through silent endurance. Each streak of crimson on the white altar stone reminded onlookers that pain endured for the gods paralleled pain endured for Sparta. Military festivals blurred the line between ritual and readiness. During the Carneia, citizens staged foot races carrying full armor to honor Apollo. Similar events required choruses of youths to sing paeans praising both deity and homeland, fusing worship with patriotism. The effect reinforced confidence that Spartan victories carried celestial approval. Plutarch relays stories of commanders who chose to fight only when the moon shone in a particular phase, believing that lunar harmony eased mortal wounds. True or embellished, such tales reveal minds attuned to cosmic rhythm as keenly as tactical terrain. Faith did not replace skill, it elevated morale, making soldiers feel part of a destiny written beyond mortal hands. When funerary rites followed battle, simple cedar coffins lined in orderly rows spoke of acceptance rather than despair. Priests offered libations, calling upon departed spirits to inspire future generations. In this way, religion framed both beginning and end of martial life, guiding Spartans from first oath to final rest with unwavering consistency. The Battle of Thermopylae, 480 BC. Summer heat pressed upon the narrow pass of Thermopylae when King Leonidas led his contingent north to stem a vast Persian host. Geography offered a corridor so constricted that numbers lost much of their advantage, and Leonidas wagered Spartan discipline could hold the line long enough for allied forces to mobilize. 3 full days of combat followed. Persian archers darkened the sky with arrows, yet hoplites locked shields and raised bronze over vulnerable gaps. When infantry assaults pressed close, Spartan spears rose and fell in measured rhythm that turned the mouth of the pass into a killing ground. Outsiders later declared that dust itself seemed unable to penetrate the wall of crimson cloaks. On the third dawn, news arrived that a hidden mountain path had betrayed the defenders. Leonidas dismissed many allies and kept a small guard, understanding that retreat would erase the strategic delay already gained. He fought amid whirling blades until breath failed, and the remaining Spartans formed a protective ring around their fallen leader before being overwhelmed. The immediate outcome was defeat, yet the larger effect proved powerful. Word of unwavering resistance sped across Greece, galvanizing cities that had wavered in the face of Persian might. At Plataea the next year, hoplites from every corner marched with memories of Thermopylae burning in their hearts, forming an alliance that would expel the invader for good. Historians still debate numbers and details, but the narrative endures. A small band held back an empire through unity, training, and faith in shared purpose. For centuries, poets recited the epitaph, urging travelers to tell Lacedaemon that her sons had obeyed her laws, sealing the episode as the epitome of Spartan example. Peloponnesian War against Athens, 430 BC. Tension between land-focused Sparta and sea-focused Athens simmered long before open conflict. By the early years of the 4th decade in the 5th century before Christ, trade disputes and rival alliances escalated into a struggle that engulfed much of the Greek world. Sparta commanded formidable infantry, yet lacked a fleet to break Athenian supply lines, while Athens possessed triremes that could raid the Peloponnese at will. Sparta opened the campaign by marching north into Attica, ravaging fields outside city walls in hopes of forcing open battle. Athens refused the bait, relying on long walls and imported grain from allies across the Aegean Sea. Year after grinding year, the war drained treasuries, tested loyalty of smaller states, and spread plague within the crowded Athenian suburbs. Seeking parity on water, Sparta eventually accepted Persian subsidies that financed shipyards at Corinth. Naval commanders learned from experienced mariners, and Spartan discipline soon transferred to deck crews who rowed with relentless cadence. The decisive moment arrived at Agoge, when Lysander captured the bulk of the Athenian fleet, beached and unguarded. One stroke shattered maritime supremacy that had endured for decades. Athens sued for peace, accepting terms that dismantled walls and limited future warships. Sparta stood at last as preeminent power across mainland Greece, yet the cost was enormous. Citizen casualties mounted, helots conscripted as rowers tasted new awareness, and Persia regained influence by funding whichever side suited its interest. Though victorious, Sparta emerged changed. The war had forced adaptation beyond traditional infantry strengths, revealing both flexibility and unforeseen vulnerabilities. In the years that followed, these repercussions would echo through every corner of Lacedaemonian policy. Spartan leadership. Unique among Greek states, Sparta balanced authority between 2 hereditary kings who traced descent from separate royal lines. One commanded armies abroad, while the other remained guardian of sacred rights at home, reducing the risk that a single ruler might overreach. Council elders, known as the Gerousia, tempered royal decisions with seasoned counsel, weaving age and lineage into stable governance. Beneath this dual pinnacle operated officers who earned reputation through merit. Brasidas, famed for audacity, carried Spartan arms deep into Thrace, where his quick strikes unsettled Athenian strongholds. His speeches blended brevity with inspiration, proving that Spartan oratory could sway allies when necessity demanded. Later generations remember Lysander not only for naval victory, but for diplomatic acumen. He cultivated friendships among Persian satraps, channeling foreign silver into dockyards that turned tides of war. His success showed that Spartan pragmatism could act beyond hoplite spear lines, expanding influence through coin as deftly as through shield push. Domestic administration rested with 5 annually elected ephors who inspected kings, directed education, and negotiated with foreign envoys. Their authority to indict royalty underscored a communal suspicion toward unchecked power, a principle born from centuries of guarding against tyranny. Collectively, this leadership mosaic blended continuity with accountability. While other cities swung between oligarchy and radical democracy, Sparta glided through turbulent eras, anchored by institutions that discouraged extremes. The model did not eliminate internal conflict, but it channeled ambition into forms compatible with national survival. Helot Management. The wealth of Laconia flowed upward from fields worked by helots, a truth every citizen acknowledged, even if seldom voiced. Each autumn, supervisors collected a fixed portion of grain, oil, and wine, leaving subsistence allotments that prevented famine yet never allowed prosperity. To deter rebellion, the state declared ritual war on helots every year, a legal fiction that permitted citizens to strike potential leaders without religious penalty. While grim, this proclamation aimed to rob insurrectionists of public heroes before momentum could gather. Fear guided the policy, but fear sprang from arithmetic. Serfs outnumbered masters many times over. Occasional grants of freedom served as incentive for loyalty. Helots who fought bravely alongside Spartans at key sieges received parcels of land in far border zones where their mixed status complicated enemy recruitment efforts. Such acts, selective yet public, hinted that obedience could yield tangible reward. Surveillance complemented coercion. Patrols toured villages at irregular hours. Elders listened for unauthorized assemblies. Market inspectors traced rumors of hidden weapons. Information flowed into magistrate offices where swift action followed even faint suspicion of plots. These methods preserved stability for generations, though their moral weight pressed upon Spartan conscience. Philosophers visiting from Athens questioned whether a society could call itself virtuous while resting on bondage. Spartans answered that survival exonerated severity, an argument time would eventually challenge. Decline of Spartan power, 370 BC. Victory in the Peloponnesian conflict masked a quiet demographic crisis. Decades of warfare reduced the pool of full citizens, and inheritance laws based on strict legitimacy prevented fresh families from replenishing ranks. By the late 4th century before Christ, battlefield formations grew thinner, revealing gaps that discipline alone could not close. Wealth concentration further eroded cohesion. Land parcels once equal drifted into fewer hands as debt forced smallholders to sell. Rich estates accumulated helot labor, while poorer citizens struggled to furnish armor required for service. The egalitarian myth that underpinned Spartan unity began to crack. International rivals sensed weakness. The Theban general Epaminondas reorganized sacred elite troops and introduced oblique advancing formations that broke the aura of invincibility. At Leuctra, his forces pierced Spartan lines, killing many veterans, including a king. Shock rippled across Greece as news spread that Sparta had lost on open ground. Back home, governing bodies confronted the dilemma of admitting outsiders to replenish citizenship or maintaining purity at the cost of military relevance. Debate dragged on, and proposed reforms stalled, hindered by those who feared loss of ancestral privilege. Indecision became its own slow poison. The once unassailable warrior state, still proud of rigorous customs, found itself unable to project power far beyond Taygetus slopes. Foreign embassies that once arrived in awe now negotiated from strength, and mercenary recruiters sought soldiers elsewhere. The fall was gradual, yet unmistakable. Loss of Messenia, 360 BC. Defeat at Leuctra emboldened Thebes to march south and liberate the Messenian plain. Helot communities, long subdued, welcomed the arrival of enemy lancers who dismantled Spartan garrisons and declared an independent city at Mount Ethome. For the first time in centuries, Spartan warriors looked across Taygetus and saw banners not their own waving over fertile fields. Economic shock followed military humiliation. Grain shipments halted, forcing Sparta to purchase food at steep prices from former allies, now uncertain of her repayment. Wealthy households liquidated silver heirlooms to secure grain, while poorer families tightened belts and rationed bread. Political authority frayed as ephors accused one another of negligence. Proposals to grant land rights to remaining loyal helots surfaced, yet conservatives blocked the motion, clinging to the belief that restoration was possible. Younger warriors, raised on tales of conquest, felt the ground shift beneath ideals they had never thought to question. In surrounding towns, perioikoi traders relocated businesses toward Arcadian markets, accelerating revenue drain. Meanwhile, Messenian farmers rebuilt terraces and irrigation ditches with Theban assistance, quickly turning the region into a rival granary that supplied foreign powers. Sparta endured, but the loss of Messenia severed the economic lifeline that had fueled her golden age. Henceforth, the city survived on memory, tourism, and modest agriculture within Laconia proper, a living lesson in how strategic resources define the fate of nations. Comparison to other warriors. All Greek soldiers drew courage from a shared heritage of myth and competitive festival sport. Yet when hoplites from different polis locked shields on dusty plains, the contrasts behind their similarities became clear. Athenian citizen soldiers, for instance, balanced naval duty with infantry obligation, and their training windows shrank every time triremes sailed out to protect grain convoys. Their phalanx therefore relied on civic pride more than relentless drill. By comparison, Thebes, under the guidance of leaders such as Epaminondas, forged the Sacred Band, a shock unit whose tightly bonded pairs of lovers fought with ferocity born from mutual devotion. The Theban thrust at Leuctra showed that innovation in depth and left-wing concentration could topple even Sparta's carefully honed frontage. Northward in Macedon, King Philip II organized a corps of professional infantry armed with pikes nearly twice the length of southern dories. The sarissa demanded different footwork and introduced a tactical reach that no conventional hoplite line could match. Yet Philip openly admired Spartan cohesion, and he drilled his men in silent maneuvers modeled on Lacedaemonian patterns. Thus, even as Macedon eclipsed the old city-state, it carried a fragment of Spartan discipline into its expanding empire. Beyond Greece, the Persian immortals offered a case study in adaptability over armor. Clad in wicker shields and scale coats, they maneuvered with lightness that hoplite columns could never achieve. When Spartans first met them at Thermopylae, their heavier bronze baffled Persian archers, but in open terrain, Persian cavalry swarmed flanks with impunity. The lesson stood. Every system thrived inside its own strategic envelope, and excellence in one domain rarely translated elsewhere without modification. Carthage produced yet another model, fielding citizen levies only in dire emergencies while relying on mercenaries and war elephants to carry the day. Greek observers condemned such dependence on hired swords, but Carthage's maritime trade empire embraced financial muscle where Sparta trusted ancestral virtue. The success of Hannibal centuries later proved that loyalty could be bought long enough to shake even the most rigid European powers. Measured against this spectrum, Sparta's enduring claim was not technological novelty nor numerical supremacy, but the stubborn reliability of its hoplite phalanx. Rivals might innovate or hire exotic troops, yet alliances counted on Spartan lines to hold firm under pressure. In every coalition war, from the Persian invasions to the rise of Macedon, the silent, crimson-cloaked files offered a psychological anchor for nervous allies. That intangible assurance, grounded in trust built through centuries of methodical training, is what truly separated the Spartans from everyone else. Attempts at reform. Rumbling discontent over shrinking citizen roles and growing inequality reached a climax during the reign of Agis IV. Inspired by tales of ancient equality, he proposed canceling debts and reallocating land to restore the broad warrior base of earlier centuries. Young men cheered, hopeful that renewed opportunity would lift them into the Syssitia ranks, while entrenched elites recoiled at the threat to inherited estates. The resulting political deadlock ended with Agis executed under cloak of legal propriety, a stark reminder that conservative inertia still held the levers of Spartan justice. Barely a generation later, Cleomenes III renewed the crusade for renewal. He harnessed royal authority to force land redistribution, expand citizenship to loyal perioikoi, and streamline military organization along Macedonian lines. For a fleeting moment, Sparta appeared capable of awakening from its demographic stupor. Veterans praised lighter shields modeled on Macedonian pelta designs, and younger warriors flocked to drilling grounds, humming with optimism. Yet reform came at the price of war. The Achaean League, wary of a resurgent Lacedaemon, forged alliances that eventually drew Macedon itself against Cleomenes. The decisive clash at Seleucia ended hopes of renaissance as visiting forces crushed the Spartan host and marched triumphant into the city. Cleomenes fled to Egypt seeking sanctuary, leaving behind shattered morale and deeper external control. Observers across Greece judged these episodes with mixed sympathy. Some hailed the king's audacity in challenging entrenched privilege, others deemed their experiments reckless nostalgia. Either way, the outcomes entrenched the lesson that structural change in a rigid society demands both internal will and external breathing room, conditions rare in an increasingly interconnected Hellenistic world. In the aftermath, Sparta entered a prolonged twilight. Reformers abroad cited Agis and Cleomenes as martyrs of social justice, while conservative Polis pointed to chaos unleashed by tampering with ancestral customs. The debate echoed far beyond Peloponnesian borders, offering future republics a cautionary tale about the delicate mechanics of civic renewal. Spartan influence on Macedon and beyond. Even as Spartan power waned, elements of its martial culture rippled through the armies that now dominated the eastern Mediterranean. Macedonian commanders adopted the laconic ethos of concise orders, ensuring that phalanx blocks several stadia wide could pivot on a shouted command heard above clashing bronze. Officers enforced daily drills reminiscent of the agōgē, melding discipline with the longer pike reach that characterized sarissa warfare. In Alexandria, where the library gathered texts from every corner of the Hellenic world, scholars copied Spartan treatises on endurance and diet. Ptolemaic trainers used abridged versions to condition royal guards, blending Greek hoplite rigor with native Egyptian infantry traditions. This hybrid force safeguarded the wealth of the Nile Delta for generations. Seleucid satraps stationed east of the Euphrates sought to steady far-flung garrisons by instituting communal mess halls that echoed the Syssitia. Though the idea never fully replaced local customs, it tightened bonds among mercenaries drawn from dozens of ethnic backgrounds. Loyalty, born of shared hardship, proved the most reliable currency when frontier revolts threatened imperial cohesion. Even distant Carthage, rebuilding after early Punic debacles, hired Spartan advisors to instruct Iberian and Libyan levies in shield wall discipline. While Carthaginian strategy still favored mobile cavalry and war elephants, incorporating a solid infantry corps slowed Roman manipular thrusts long enough for Hannibal to deliver tactical surprises. Thus, Sparta's influence turned up in subtle ways on battlefields the original hoplites would never visit. These adaptations illustrated a broader pattern. Iconic institutions rarely survive intact, yet their most efficient elements diffuse into successor systems. By 200 BC, the city on the Eurotas no longer steered Greek politics, but its approach to unity through training persisted in every major army from the Adriatic to the Hindu Kush. Sparta under Roman hegemony. When Roman legions swept through Greece, Sparta avoided the fate of Corinth's fiery ruin by choosing cautious cooperation. Senators in Rome admired Lacedaemon's ancient austerity, weaving tales of kinship between Spartan discipline and Roman virtus. As a consequence, the city gained semi-autonomous status within the province of Achaea, transforming from regional power to living museum. Tourists from across the Republic followed the Via Egnatia southward to witness youths enduring ritual flogging at Artemis Orthia's altar. Guides recited heroic episodes of Thermopylae in lilting Latin, while local artisans sold miniature bronze shields as souvenirs for villas on the Tiber. The economy reoriented toward spectacle, preserving traditions once forged for survival, now performed for applause. Yet Roman oversight curtailed any military resurgence. The city's walls remained low, garrisons small, and citizen drills symbolic. Gladiatorial contests occasionally featured reenactments of Spartan phalanx maneuvers, offering audiences a taste of antique valor without the attendant political threat. In taverns, retired centurions debated whether they could best Leonidas in single combat, blending nostalgia with imperial swagger. Administratively, Roman magistrates retained the ephorate as municipal council, but checked its rulings through provincial governors. Property disputes over dwindling estates continued, often resolved in favor of families who demonstrated ancestral service to both Sparta and Rome. Thus, local aristocrats learned to balance two layers of patronage, one etched in Laconian stone stelae, the other minted on Roman bronze coins. By the twilight of the Republic, Sparta's name carried more cultural capital than strategic weight. Yet the arrangement suited Roman policy, an inspirational partner that symbolized indomitable virtue while posing no threat to imperial control. In that paradoxical niche, the legend endured long after the spears were stacked away. Conclusion. From the chilly dawn drills of 500 BC to the pixelated battlefields of our own decade, the Spartan experiment has traveled a vast arc without losing its magnetic pull. We traced the journey through geographical isolation, social engineering, battlefield triumph, painful decline, and eventual metamorphosis into global icon. Each era selected traits that suited its purposes, proving that history lives not only in ruins, but in the stories societies choose to retell. At its core, Sparta teaches that unity forged through shared sacrifice can elevate a community to astonishing heights, yet the same rigidity that empowers triumph may also sow eventual decline. Land policies meant to guard equality backfired when adaptation lagged behind changing realities, and reliance on coerced labor undercut moral authority even as it sustained military readiness. The city's afterlife shows another lesson. Narratives possess lives of their own, capable of inspiring generations far removed from dusty Evrotas banks. Whether in revolutionary slogans, classroom curricula, or blockbuster films, Spartan ideals continue to spark debate on courage, discipline, and the balance between state and individual. For creators, educators, and leaders today, the challenge lies in discerning which elements of the legend nourish progress without replicating the darker shadows of exclusion and coercion. By engaging the full complexity of the Spartan record, its virtues, flaws, and evolving interpretations, we honor both historical truth and the enduring quest for human excellence. So, as we close this exploration, remember that every tale of bronze shields and crimson cloaks invites reflection on our own civic habits. If the story of Sparta sharpens our commitment to disciplined compassion and adaptable resilience, then the voices of Leonidas and his companions still march beside us on the road ahead. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more 4K history documentaries. See you in the next video.